"You don't belong here. Go back to the zoo where you came from." Those were the words Carter O'Connell spat at the young woman sitting in seat 1A. He saw a girl in a grey hoodie and worn-out sneakers and assumed she was stealing a first-class experience. He threw her bag into the aisle. He humiliated her until she was forced to the back of the plane. He thought he had won. He thought his platinum status made him untouchable. But Carter made a fatal miscalculation. He didn't realize that the woman he just kicked out wasn't just a passenger. She was Serena Sterling, the new owner of the airline, and exactly 30 seconds after he stole her seat. The engines didn't just stall, they shut down completely. What happens next isn't just justice. It's a masterclass in hard karma. The rain lashed against the reinforced glass of JFK International Airport, turning the tarmac into a blurry smear of grey and black. Inside the exclusive first-class lounge, the air smelled of expensive espresso and conditioned leather. But Serena Sterling didn't care about the amenities. She just wanted to sleep. Serena pulled the hood of her oversized charcoal grey sweatshirt further over her head. She had been awake for 36 hours straight, finalizing the acquisition of Horizon Air, a struggling transatlantic carrier that was bleeding money. The deal had closed privately at 4 a.m. No press release had been sent out yet. As far as the world knew, Serena Sterling was just a ghost, a 26-year-old tech mogul who rarely showed her face in public. She adjusted her glasses. They were thick-rimmed and simple, hiding the fatigue in her eyes. She checked her boarding pass on her phone, seat 1A. "Final boarding call for Flight 802 to London Heathrow," the announcement chimed. Serena grabbed her canvas backpack. It was old, frayed at the straps, a relic from her college days before her net worth hit 10 figures. She preferred it to the Birkin bags her advisors tried to push on her. It kept her grounded. It also, unfortunately, made people underestimate her. She walked down the jet bridge, the cold draft biting at her ankles. When she stepped onto the plane, the head flight attendant, a frantic-looking woman named Monica, barely glanced at her boarding pass. "Right this way, ma'am. First cabin on the left." Serena collapsed into seat 1A. It was a suite, really, a private pod with a lie-flat bed and a sliding door. She tossed her backpack into the overhead bin and sat down, exhaling a breath she felt like she'd been holding for a month. She closed her eyes, ready to disconnect. "Excuse me?" The voice was sharp, nasally, and dripping with condescension. Serena didn't open her eyes immediately. She hoped whoever it was would go away. "I said, excuse me." A heavy hand tapped her shoulder hard. Serena's eyes snapped open. Standing over her was a man who looked like he had been manufactured in a factory for corporate bullies. He was tall, wearing a navy bespoke suit that was slightly too tight across the chest, signaling vanity rather than fitness. His hair was slicked back with enough product to waterproof a deck. On his wrist sat a gold Patek Philippe watch that he made sure was visible as he pointed a manicured finger at her. "Yes?" Serena asked, her voice calm but raspy from exhaustion. "You're in my seat," the man said. He didn't ask, he stated it. Serena blinked. She pulled her phone out again. "I don't think so. I have 1A. This is 1A. The man laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. He turned to the people behind him, a younger associate carrying a briefcase, and smirked. "Did you hear that, Brad? She thinks she has 1A. He turned back to Serena, his smile vanishing. "Listen, sweetheart, I don't know how you snuck up here while the crew wasn't looking, or if you used some employee discount to upgrade your economy ticket, but this seat is reserved for full-fare paying Platinum members. That's me, Carter O'Connell, Senior VP of Oakhaven Capital." "Nice to meet you, Carter," Serena said, her tone unimpressed. "I'm Serena, and I'm sitting in the seat I paid for. If you check your ticket, I'm sure you're in 1B or maybe row 2. Carter's face flushed a dangerous shade of red. "I don't sit in row 2. I always sit in 1A. It's my lucky seat. I close deals in this seat. Now get up before I have security drag you off." Serena sighed. She really didn't have the energy for this. "Sir, I'm not moving. Please find your assigned seat." Carter didn't move. Instead, he reached up, grabbed her canvas backpack from the open bin, and threw it onto the floor of the aisle. The sound of her laptop hitting the carpeted floor was a dull thud that silenced the entire cabin. "Oops," Carter sneered. "Looks like your trash fell." Serena stared at the bag. Her temper, usually locked behind layers of corporate discipline, flared hot in her chest. That laptop contained the encryption keys for her company's entire cloud infrastructure. "Monica!" Carter shouted, snapping his fingers in the air. Monica, the flight attendant, rushed over. She looked exhausted, clearly already having a bad day. "Yes, Mr. O'Connell? Is there a problem?" "There is a massive problem," Carter said, stepping into Serena's personal space. "There is a stowaway in my seat. I want her removed. Immediately." Monica looked at Serena, then at the tablet in her hand. Mr. O'Connell, according to the manifest, Ms. Sterling is assigned to 1A. You are in 1B. It's just across the aisle." "I don't care what your little iPad says," Carter roared, causing several passengers to jump. "I specifically requested the window side. I called the concierge line this morning. They assured me it was handled." He gestured wildly at Serena, curling his lip in disgust. "This individual clearly doesn't belong here. Look at her. She's wearing pajamas. She probably washed dishes to afford a standby ticket." "Sir, please lower your voice," Monica pleaded, looking terrified. "The flight is fully booked. If Ms. Sterling is in 1A, I can't just move her." Carter leaned in close to Monica, his voice dropping to a venomous hiss. "Let me make this crystal clear for you, Monica. My firm spends $2 million a year with this airline. I personally know the Vice President of Customer Relations. If I am not sitting in 1A by the time the door closes, I will make sure you are fired before we land in London. Do you understand me?" Monica went pale. She looked at Serena, her eyes begging for a compromise. Serena saw the fear in the flight attendant's eyes. She knew that look. It was the look of someone living paycheck to paycheck, terrified of a man with a little bit of power destroying their livelihood. Serena unbuckled her seatbelt. "It's fine, Monica," Serena said softly. She stood up, standing toe-to-toe with Carter. She was shorter than him, but she held herself with a stillness that was almost unnerving. "Smart move, girl," Carter smirked, straightening his tie. "Now grab your trash and head to the back. I think row 45 is near the toilets. That's more your speed." Serena bent down and picked up her backpack. She dusted it off slowly. Then she looked Carter dead in the eye. "You really want this seat, Carter?" "I own this seat," he scoffed. "Take it," Serena said, "but I promise you this will be the most expensive flight you ever take." Carter laughed, a loud barking sound. "Is that a threat? From you? Please, go serve drinks or whatever it is you do." He shoved past her and dropped his heavy frame into seat 1A, stretching his legs out with a groan of satisfaction. Finally, some class. Monica looked at Serena, nearly in tears. "Ms. Sterling, I am so sorry. I don't have any other first-class seats. I have a middle seat in Economy Plus. Row 22? "It's fine, Monica," Serena said, her voice icy calm. "Don't worry about it. Just get us in the air." Serena walked down the aisle. She passed the business-class cabin, where people whispered and stared. She walked past Economy Plus. She kept walking until she reached the very last row of the plane. Row 48, the seats that didn't recline because they were up against the galley wall. She squeezed into the middle seat between a man eating a pungent tuna sandwich and a teenager listening to heavy metal so loud she could hear the drums through his headphones. Serena sat down. She didn't cry. She didn't complain. She simply pulled out her phone. The screen displayed a secure login page for Sterling Systems. She typed in a command sequence: Target, Horizon Air Fleet Management. Flight ID, HA802. Authorization, CEO Override. She waited. The plane began to push back from the gate. Carter O'Connell was likely sipping champagne right now, thinking he was the king of the world. "Enjoy the champagne, Carter," Serena thought as her thumb hovered over the execute button. "Because you're not going to London." The Boeing 787 taxied slowly toward the runway. The safety demonstration played on the screens, but in the back row, Serena wasn't watching. She was watching the time, 11:42 a.m. She knew the pre-flight checklist protocols better than the pilots did. She had written the code for the digital handshake that occurred between the aircraft's transponder and the tower. Up in first class, Carter O'Connell was living his best life. He had kicked off his loafers and was wiggling his toes in the thick carpet of seat 1A. He snapped a selfie, making sure the glass of Dom Perignon and the first-class menu were visible, captioning it, "Standard procedure, top of the food chain. Dashka grind set, shutta chacha first class." "Can I get you a refill, Mr. O'Connell?" Monica asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Keep 'em coming, sweetheart," Carter said without looking up from his phone. "And bring me some warm nuts, the ones without peanuts. I hate cheap fillers." "Right away." Carter turned to his associate Brad, who was sitting across the aisle in 1B. "See that, Brad? That's how you handle the world. You take what's yours. That girl, she was probably a lottery winner or something. Or maybe a diversity upgrade. She didn't have the pedigree for this seat." "You were pretty rough on her, Carter," Brad muttered, looking uncomfortable. "She didn't seem like she was causing trouble." "Weakness, Brad, that's your problem. You smell weakness, and you feel pity. I smell weakness, and I see opportunity." Carter took a long sip of champagne. "This is going to be a great flight. I can feel it." The plane turned onto the main taxiway. The captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Harrison speaking. We're number 3 for takeoff. Flight attendants, please prepare the cabin for departure." The engines whined, spooling up slightly as they crept forward. And then silence. It wasn't a gradual fade, it was an instant jarring cut. The hum of the air conditioning died. The ambient lighting in the cabin went black. The powerful GE90 engines, capable of generating 115,000 pounds of thrust, spooled down with a mournful groan. The plane lurched to a halt in the middle of the taxiway. "What the hell?" Carter spilled a drop of champagne on his tie. "Hey, what happened to the AC?" In the cockpit, Captain Harrison was frantically flipping switches. The entire dashboard had gone dark. Every digital display, altitude, navigation, fuel management, was dead. "Mayday, Mayday Tower," Harrison said into his headset, but there was only static. The radio was dead too. "Captain, everything is offline," the first officer said, panic rising in his voice. "The battery backups aren't engaging. It's like the plane has been bricked." "That's impossible," Harrison snapped. "This is a triple redundant system. Reboot the main bus." "I tried, sir. It's locked out. There's a message on the primary flight display." Harrison squinted at the one screen that still had power. The central maintenance log. It wasn't showing error codes. It was showing text. "System lockdown initiated. Unauthorized occupant. Detected in seat. 1A. Biometric mismatch. Protocol. Ground stop." "What in God's name?" Harrison whispered. "Biometric mismatch? We don't even have biometric sensors in the seats." "We do now," the first officer said, tapping the screen. "Look at the software version. It updated 4 minutes ago. Sterling Nexus firmware v9.0. Harrison felt a cold shiver run down his spine. "Sterling? That's the company that just bought us." Back in the cabin, the temperature was already rising. The lack of airflow was making the space stuffy. Murmurs of confusion turned into complaints. "Monica," Carter shouted into the darkness. "Why have we stopped? My schedule is tight." Monica appeared with a flashlight. I don't know, sir. The pilot is communicating with us via the emergency handset. We have a total power failure." "Well, fix it," Carter barked. "I have a dinner in Canary Wharf at 8 p.m. Suddenly, the intercom crackled. It was the only system working, powered by the emergency circuit, but it wasn't the captain's voice. It was a calm, female voice. Clear, authoritative. "Good morning, passengers of Flight 802. This is a message from the owner of the airline." Carter froze. The voice sounded familiar. "I apologize for the interruption of your journey. We are experiencing a security violation in the first-class cabin, specifically Seat 1A. Carter's eyes widened. He looked at the speaker above his head. "This aircraft is equipped with a new prototype security protocol linked to my personal biometric data. When an unauthorized user forces their way into the primary command seat, Seat 1A, the aircraft automatically enters a protective lockdown mode to prevent hijacking or theft." A pin could have dropped in the cabin. Carter felt the blood drain from his face. Currently, the individual in Seat 1A is not the authorized passenger. Until Seat 1A is vacated and the authorized passenger is restored to their rightful place, This plane is nothing more than a 300-ton paperweight. It will not fly, the doors will not unlock, and the police have been notified." The voice paused and then added a final chilling detail. "Mr. O'Connell, please remove your feet from my upholstery. You're ruining the leather." The intercom clicked off. Every head in first class turned to look at Carter. He was shrinking into his seat, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. In the back of the plane, row 48, Serena Sterling lowered her phone. The heavy metal teenager next to her pulled off his headphones. "Whoa," the kid said. "Did you hear that? Some rich dude is hijacking the plane." "Something like that," Serena said, closing her eyes. But the drama was only beginning. Because Carter O'Connell wasn't the type of man to admit defeat. He was the type of man to double down. Up in the front, Carter stood up, his face purple with rage. "This is a prank. It's a hack. That girl, she's a hacker." He pointed a trembling finger toward the back of the plane. "She sabotaged the plane. Arrest her." Captain Harrison burst out of the cockpit door, looking furious. He wasn't looking at the back of the plane. He was looking directly at Carter. "Sir," the captain said, his voice shaking with suppressed anger, "I don't know what you did or who you messed with, but you just grounded a $100 million aircraft. Get out of that seat. Now." "I will not," Carter screamed, losing all composure. "I paid for this flight. I am a platinum member. You work for me." "Actually," a voice came from the aisle behind him. Carter spun around. Serena Sterling was walking up the aisle from the back of the plane. She moved slowly, the sea of passengers parting for her. She didn't look tired anymore. She looked dangerous. She stopped 5 feet from Carter. "Actually, Carter," she said, loud enough for the whole cabin to hear, "they work for me. I bought Horizon Air at 4 a.m. this morning, and you are currently trespassing on my private property." For a solid 10 seconds, the first-class cabin was silent enough to hear the ice melting in Carter O'Connell's glass of Dom Perignon. The tension was physical, heavy, and suffocating. Carter stared at Serena. His brain was trying to process the information, but his ego was rejecting it like a bad organ transplant. She owned the airline. This girl in a hoodie who looked like she shopped at a thrift store bin. Impossible. "You expect me to believe that?" Carter let out a sharp, incredulous laugh, turning to the other passengers to build a coalition of disbelief. "Did you hear that? She's delusional. She's clearly mental. Captain, this woman is having a psychotic break. She's a danger to the flight. Why are you listening to her?" Captain Harrison didn't look at Carter. He was looking at Serena, studying her face. He had heard rumors about the acquisition, whispers in the pilots' union about a tech conglomerate called Sterling Systems buying out the debt-ridden Horizon Air. He had seen the memo about a new CEO, a recluse, a prodigy. "Ms. Sterling," the captain asked, his voice respectful but wary, "can you prove your identity?" Serena didn't reach for an ID card. She simply looked at the dead digital flight display on the bulkhead. "Captain Harrison," Serena said, her voice steady, "your employee ID is 492 Alpha. You've been flying with Horizon for 22 years. You have a mortgage on a property in Westchester, and you're currently worried about your pension because the previous board mismanaged the funds. I reinstated the pension fund at 5 a.m. this morning. You'll see the confirmation in your email when we get power back." Harrison's jaw dropped slightly. That information wasn't on any manifest. That was internal HR data deep in the encrypted servers. It's an honor, ma'am," Harrison stammered, straightening his posture. "I had no idea you were on board." "I didn't want a fanfare, Captain," Serena said, glancing coldly at Carter. "I just wanted to sleep. But apparently I didn't pay the platinum tax." Carter stood up abruptly, knocking his tray table over. The glass of champagne shattered on the floor. "Bullshit. She's a hacker. She stole that data. Officer," Carter shouted toward the front galley, expecting security to magically appear. "She hacked the plane. That's an act of terrorism. Arrest her." "Sit down, Mr. O'Connell," Captain Harrison ordered, stepping forward. "You are creating a disturbance." "I'm creating a disturbance?" Carter screamed, his face turning a mottled purple. He jabbed a finger at Serena. "She shut down the engines. She held us hostage. I am a senior partner at Oakhaven Capital. Do you have any idea how much money I lose every minute this plane sits here?" Serena took a step closer to him. She didn't shout. She didn't look angry. She looked bored. "Carter, let's talk about Oakhaven Capital," she said. Carter froze. "You're flying to London to close the acquisition of Greenfield Tech, right?" Serena continued. "A hostile takeover. You're planning to strip their assets, fire 400 employees, and sell the IP to a Chinese competitor. That's the deal you needed this seat for." Carter's eyes narrowed. "How do you know that? That is privileged information." "It was privileged," Serena corrected, "until you uploaded the diligence files to the Horizon Air Wi-Fi server during your last flight 2 weeks ago. You really should use a VPN, Carter. Our security systems flagged it as sensitive data traffic." "You spied on me," Carter gasped. "I monitored traffic on my network," Serena said. "But here's the twist. I happen to like Greenfield Tech. I think their sustainable battery technology is the future. So while I was sitting in row 48, squeezed between a tuna sandwich and a heavy metal playlist, I made a phone call." The cabin was dead silent. Even the baby in row 4 had stopped crying. "I bought Greenfield Tech, Carter," Serena said, a small shark-like smile touching her lips. "I outbid you. The deal is dead. You're flying to London to meet with a board of directors that doesn't answer to you anymore. They answer to me." Carter staggered back as if he'd been punched in the gut. He grabbed the headrest of seat 1A to steady himself. You can't do that. That's insider trading. That's illegal." "It's capitalism," Serena shrugged. "And it's perfectly legal when you're the one writing the checks. So you see, Carter, you didn't just steal my seat. You cost your firm a $400 million deal. I wonder how the partners at Oakhaven will feel about that." "You bitch," Carter lunged. It happened fast. Carter, blinded by rage and the collapse of his career, swung a fist at Serena, but he never connected. Brad, the associate from Seat 1B, the man Carter had bullied and belittled for years, suddenly shot up. He didn't defend Carter, he tackled him. Brad slammed his boss against the bulkhead wall, pinning his arm behind his back. "That's enough, Carter," Brad yelled, his face red. "Don't make it worse." "Get off me, you traitor. You're fired." Carter writhed, spitting foam. "You can't fire me," Brad panted, looking at Serena with a mixture of awe and fear. "I think you're the one who's done." At that moment, the heavy cabin door thumped. A loud knock echoed through the silence. "Port Authority Police, open up." Captain Harrison looked at Serena. She nodded. "Let them in, Captain. Let's get this trash off my plane." Harrison manually unlocked the door. It swung open, and 4 officers from the Port Authority Police Department stormed in. They were decked out in tactical gear, clearly responding to the system lockdown hijack alert the plane had automatically broadcasted. "Hands, let me see your hands," the lead officer, Sergeant Miller, shouted, scanning the cabin with intense focus. Carter, seeing the police, managed to shove Brad off him. He smoothed his suit, a manic gleam in his eye. He pointed immediately at Serena. "Thank God you're here," Carter yelled, putting on his best, distressed victim voice. "Officers, arrest that woman. She hacked the plane. She's a cyber-terrorist. She threatened to kill me." Sergeant Miller looked at Serena, who was standing calmly with her hands visible. Then he looked at Carter, who was sweating profusely, red-faced, with champagne stains on his shirt. "Who is the disruptive passenger?" Sergeant Miller asked the captain. "He is," Captain Harrison said, pointing at Carter without hesitation. "Mr. Carter O'Connell. He physically assaulted another passenger, refused crew instructions, and attempted to strike the owner of the airline." "The owner?" Miller blinked. "Ms. Sterling," Harrison gestured to Serena. Sergeant Miller's demeanor changed instantly. He recognized the name. The airport had been buzzing all morning about the VIP acquisition. "Mr. O'Connell," Miller said, stepping forward, his hand resting on his belt, "I need you to turn around and place your hands behind your back." "Are you insane?" Carter shrieked. "Do you know who I am? I know the police commissioner. I play golf with the mayor. If you touch me, I will have your badge. I will sue this entire airport into the ground." "Sir, you are in violation of federal aviation regulations," Miller said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming dangerous. "Interfering with a flight crew is a federal felony. Now turn around or we will assist you." "I'm not going anywhere." Carter grabbed the armrests of seat 1A. "This is my seat. I paid for it." Sergeant Miller didn't argue. He nodded to his partner, Officer Kowalski. Kowalski, a man the size of a vending machine, stepped forward. He didn't use gentle hands. He grabbed Carter by the lapels of his $3,000 suit and yanked him out of the seat like a rag doll. "Hey, that's Italian silk," Carter screamed. "And these are stainless steel," Kowalski said, slapping the handcuffs on Carter's wrists with a satisfying click-click. They dragged him down the aisle. Carter was kicking and screaming, his dignity completely gone. Brad, call the lawyers." Carter yelled over his shoulder. "Call the governor, Brad." Brad remained in seat 1B. He picked up his glass of water and took a slow sip, watching his boss get hauled away. "Sorry, Carter," Brad called out. "My phone's in airplane mode." A ripple of laughter went through the cabin. Then someone started clapping. It started in Economy Plus, then spread to business, and finally the first-class passengers joined in. It was a thunderous applause, a release of tension. As the police dragged Carter onto the jet bridge, he made one last desperate attempt. He locked eyes with Serena. "You haven't won," he spat. "I'll destroy you. I'll sue you for every penny. You'll be back in the ghetto where you belong." Serena walked to the door of the plane. She stood in the frame, looking down at Carter as he was pressed against the wall of the jet bridge by the officers. "Carter," she said, her voice projecting clearly, "I'm worth $42 billion. My legal team has a bigger budget than your entire firm. By the time I'm done with you, you won't be able to get a job cleaning the toilets at a bus station." She signaled to the officers, "Take him away, and tell the DA I'm pressing full charges for assault and endangerment." "You got it, Ms. Sterling," Sergeant Miller said, tipping his cap. As they hauled him away, the passengers in the terminal windows were pressing their phones against the glass, recording the spectacle. Carter O'Connell, the man who thought he was untouchable, was being frog-marched out of JFK in handcuffs, weeping. Serena turned back to the cabin. The silence returned, but this time it was respectful, awestruck. She looked at Monica, the flight attendant who had been terrified just 20 minutes ago. Monica was wiping a tear from her eye. "Monica," Serena said softly. "Yes, Mrs. Sterling." Monica braced herself, worried she was in trouble for letting Carter take the seat in the first place. "I'm sorry you had to deal with that trash," Serena said. "It won't happen again. I want you to take the rest of the day off. The relief crew is on their way." "Oh, thank you, Mom, but I need the hours," Monica said honestly. "You don't need the hours," Serena smiled, "because I'm giving every crew member on this flight a $20,000 bonus for hazard pay. Consider it an apology for the delay." Monica's hands flew to her mouth. "Oh my God, thank you. Thank you so much." Serena turned to the rest of the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, the police have cleared the aircraft. The engineers are rebooting the system now. We will be in the air in 20 minutes. Open bar is on me for the duration of the flight." Cheers erupted again. Serena walked back to seat 1A. The leather was ruffled. The pillow was on the floor. It smelled faintly of Carter's overpowering cologne. She stared at it for a moment, then she shook her head. "Monica?" "Yes, Ms. Sterling." "Burn this seat cover when we land," Serena said, "and bring me a sanitizer wipe, a big one." She sat down, finally claiming the spot that was hers. She pulled her laptop out of her backpack. The screen was cracked from Carter throwing it. She frowned, running a finger over the spiderweb fracture. That's going to cost him extra, she thought. But the story wasn't over. Carter was in custody, but men like Carter O'Connell didn't go down without trying to burn the world down with them. He had connections. He had leverage. And as Serena would soon find out, he had one final dirty card to play. One that would threaten not just her airline, but her life. While the plane taxied back to the runway, down in the holding cells of JFK, Carter was using his one phone call. He wasn't calling his lawyer. He wasn't calling his wife. He was calling a number that didn't have a name attached to it. A number that belonged to a fixer named Silas, a man who specialized in making billionaires disappear. "She humiliated me, Silas," Carter whispered into the phone, his voice shaking with a psychotic rage. "I want her gone. I don't care what it costs. Bring down the plane." 3 hours into the flight, the chaos of JFK felt like a distant memory. Flight 802 was cruising smoothly at 38,000 feet over the dark, churning waters of the North Atlantic. The cabin lights were dimmed to a soft twilight blue. Most passengers were asleep, lulled by the steady hum of the engines and the complimentary champagne Serena had ordered for everyone. In seat 1A, Serena was not sleeping. She was working. Her cracked laptop screen flickered as she reviewed the forensic accounting logs of Oakhaven Capital, the files she had pulled from the network traffic earlier. "Ms. Sterling?" Serena looked up. It was Brad, the young associate who had tackled Carter. He was standing in the aisle, looking hesitant. He held a glass of water in his shaking hand. "Hi, Brad. Couldn't sleep?" Serena asked, closing her laptop slightly. "Not really," Brad sighed, sitting on the ottoman of the empty seat across the aisle. I can't believe I did that. I tackled a senior partner. My career is over. Oakhaven will blacklist me from every financial firm in New York." Serena studied him. He looked young, maybe 24, terrified of the uncertain future. "Brad, you didn't tackle a partner. You tackled a felon. And regarding your career, tell me, did you write the algorithm for the risk assessment model Oakhaven uses? I saw your name in the metadata of the files." Brad blinked, surprised. "Yeah, I did." Carter took credit for it, though, said it was his proprietary vision. "It's good code," Serena nodded approvingly. "Clean, efficient. Sterling Systems is looking for a vice president of algorithmic strategy. The starting salary is double what Carter was paying you. Interested?" Brad dropped his glass. Luckily, it was plastic. Are you serious?" "I don't joke about talent, Brad, and I value loyalty. You stood up for what was right when it mattered. That's rare in our industry." Brad looked like he might cry. He opened his mouth to say thank you, but the words never came out. Because the plane lurched. It wasn't turbulence. Turbulence shakes a plane. This felt like a giant hand had grabbed the tail of the Boeing 777 and yanked it sideways. Serena was thrown against the window. The coffee cup on her tray table flew across the cabin, splashing onto the aisle. "Whoa!" Brad yelled, grabbing a seat back. "Ladies and gentlemen, please fasten your seatbelts immediately." Captain Harrison's voice came over the PA. He sounded strained, breathless. The plane didn't stabilize. Instead, the nose pitched down, sharply. Serena felt the sickening sensation of weightlessness. Her stomach rose into her throat. The engines, which had been humming a steady tenor note, suddenly screamed into a high-pitched whine. "We're diving," Serena whispered. Her eyes locked onto the flight path map on her screen. The altitude numbers were dropping fast. 38,000, 37,500, 36,800. "Is it air pockets?" Brad asked, his face pale. "No," Serena said, unbuckling her belt and grabbing her laptop. "Listen to the engines. They're spooling up to max thrust, but the nose is down. The plane is trying to speed up toward the ocean." She stood up. The angle of the floor was steep. She had to hold on to the overhead bins to keep from sliding forward. "Stay here, Brad," she ordered. Serena fought her way toward the cockpit door. Monica was strapped into her jump seat, clutching a rosary beads. "Monica, call the cockpit," Serena shouted over the roar of the wind. "I tried," Monica yelled back, terror in her eyes. "They aren't answering. The phone line is dead." Serena reached the cockpit door. She punched in the emergency overrides code, the CEO master key. The keypad flashed red. Access denied. "It's locked from the inside," Serena muttered. "Impossible. The overrides are hardwired." She pounded on the reinforced door. "Captain Harrison, let me in." Inside the cockpit, it was a scene of absolute pandemonium. Captain Harrison and First Officer Lewis were hauling back on the yokes with all their strength. Their veins bulged in their necks. "I have no control," Lewis screamed. "The stick is dead. It's totally unresponsive." "Cut the auto throttle," Harrison roared. "Disengage the computer." "I can't. It's locked out," Lewis shouted, hitting the disconnect buttons frantically. "The system says we are in remote navigation mode." On the central screen, the flight data had disappeared. In its place, a single line of green text blinked ominously. Subject: Carter O sends his regards. Destination: null. "Oh my God," Harrison whispered, staring at the screen. "We've been hacked." Back in the cabin, the oxygen masks dropped from the ceiling. Screams erupted from economy. The plane was descending at 4,000 feet per minute. At this rate, they would hit the water in less than 8 minutes. Serena saw the masks drop. She knew she had to get into that cockpit. The electronic lock was jammed by the software, which meant she needed to bypass the digital brain entirely. She turned to Brad, who had unbuckled and crawled toward her. "Brad, I need your help," Serena shouted. "There's a hatch in the floor of the forward galley. It leads to the avionics bay. The hellhole. We have to go down." "Under the floor?" Brad looked at the small maintenance hatch hidden under a piece of carpet. "Is that safe?" "Do you want to live or do you want to swim?" Serena snapped. She ripped the carpet back. There was a recessed handle. She yanked it up, revealing a dark, narrow hole with a metal ladder leading down into the belly of the plane. The roar of the air was deafening down there. Only a thin layer of aluminum separated them from the atmosphere. "Come on." Serena slid down the ladder into the darkness. Brad followed. They dropped into the electronics and equipment, EE bay. It was a cramped, freezing room filled with racks of servers, blinking lights, and thick bundles of wire. This was the brain of the aircraft. The plane shook violently. Serena was thrown against a server rack, hitting her shoulder hard. She gritted her teeth against the pain. "Find the SATCOM unit," Serena yelled, pulling a flashlight from her pocket. "It's a black box, usually labeled Honeywell or Thales. It has a blue light flashing." Brad scrambled over the wires. "What are we doing?" "The hacker is controlling the plane remotely through the satellite uplink," Serena explained, her fingers flying across a diagnostic panel. "Carter made a call. He hired someone to hijack the connection. We have to cut the cord. Here." Brad pointed to a unit near the nose gear well. "It's blinking blue rapidly." "That's the data stream." Serena lunged for it. "He's uploading a dive command loop." She grabbed the thick cable connecting the SATCOM unit to the main flight computer. She tried to pull it out, but it was screwed in with safety-locking nuts. "I can't get it loose." Serena grit her teeth, her fingers slipping on the cold metal. "We need a wrench." "We don't have a wrench," Brad yelled. The plane banked hard to the left, throwing them both to the floor. Gravity was increasing. G-forces were building up. They were pulling 2 Gs now. It was becoming hard to lift their arms. "Brad," Serena gasped, struggling to stand up against the crushing weight. "Your belt. Give me your belt." "What?" "The buckle. It's metal." "I can use it as a lever." Brad fumbled with his pants, ripping his leather belt off. He tossed it to Serena. She jammed the prong of the heavy brass buckle into the locking nut of the data cable. It wasn't a perfect fit, but it gave her leverage. "Come on," she groaned, putting her entire body weight into the turn. Sparks showered down from a blown fuse overhead. The plane was screaming toward the ocean, 15,000 feet. "It's not turning," Serena cried. "Let me help." Brad grabbed her hands, adding his strength. Together, they heaved against the makeshift tool. Crack. The locking nut snapped. Serena yanked the cable free. Instantly, the blue light on the box died. The moment the cable was severed, the plane shuddered. In the cockpit, the remote navigation mode message vanished. The screens flickered and rebooted. "I have control," Captain Harrison shouted. "I have the stick." He pulled back on the yoke with everything he had. "Pull up, pull up." The mechanical voice of the terrain awareness warning system, TORS, blared. "Terrain, terrain, pull up, pull up." The ocean was rushing up to meet them. The altimeter spun. 5,000 feet. 4,000 feet. The nose of the giant jet began to lift, but the momentum was immense. The G-forces slammed everyone into their seats, or the floor. In the EE bay, Serena and Brad were pinned to the metal grating of the floor. They couldn't move. They could only watch the wires vibrating above them. Come on," Serena whispered, tears of exertion streaming down her face. The plane groaned under the stress, wings flexed to their breaking point. At 2,000 feet above the waves, the descent stopped. The nose pitched up toward the stars. The engines roared with power, no longer fighting the computer but obeying the pilot. They climbed. 3,000. 5,000. 10,000. The G-forces eased. "We're level," First Officer Lewis gasped, slumping over the controls. "We're level at 12,000 feet. Captain Harrison wiped sweat from his eyes. His hands were shaking so hard he could barely hold the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is the captain. We have regained control of the aircraft. We are leveling off. Please remain seated." Down in the electronics bay, Serena rolled onto her back, gasping for air. It was freezing cold, she was bruised, and her hands were bleeding from yanking the cable. Brad sat up, looking green. Did we just save the plane? Serena sat up slowly. She looked at the severed cable dangling from the SATCOM box. We stopped the remote control, she said, her voice hard, but we aren't safe yet. She crawled over to the server rack she had accessed earlier. She plugged her laptop directly into the plane's maintenance port. What are you doing? Brad asked. That signal came from somewhere, Serena said, typing furiously. The connection was cut, but the log file is still in the cache. If I can dump the memory before the system purges it, I can trace the source. The screen filled with hexadecimal code. Serena scanned it, her eyes narrowing. Got you, she whispered. Who? The signal wasn't just a random hack, Serena explained, pointing to a string of numbers. It was routed through a proxy in the Cayman Islands, but the encryption key used to authorize the takeover. It matches a digital signature associated with a specific corporate account. She hit a few more keys, decrypting the signature. User, Oakhaven Admin 001 device, ID C. O'Connell iPhone 15 Pro. He didn't just hire a hacker, Serena said, her blood running cold. He used his own phone as the authentication token. He authorized the strike. But he's in jail, Brad said, confused. He made a call, Serena realized. He must have called a fixer, a dead man's switch. He told someone to execute Order 66. But he was arrogant. He wanted his fingerprint on it. He wanted to be the one who pushed the button, even if he did it by proxy. Serena closed the laptop. We have the evidence. This isn't just assault anymore, Brad. This is 300 counts of attempted murder. Suddenly, the plane shook again. A new alarm blared in the cockpit and in the EE bay. Beep, beep, beep. What now? Brad groaned. Serena looked at the hydraulic pressure gauges on the wall of the bay. They were dropping to 0. The dive, Serena said, her face pale. The stress of the pull-up. It blew a hydraulic line. We're losing fluid. What does that mean? It means, Serena said, grabbing the ladder, that we have no landing gear and no flaps. We're going to have to crash land. They climbed back up into the cabin. The passengers were sobbing, hugging each other. The atmosphere was one of traumatized relief, but the flight attendants were rushing down the aisles with serious faces. Serena burst into the cockpit. Captain, the hydraulics. I know, Harrison shouted. We're bleeding out. I have partial control of the ailerons, but the gear is dead. I can't lower the wheels. Where are we diverting? Serena asked. Gander, Newfoundland, Harrison said. It's the closest strip. But Serena, without flaps, our approach speed will be 200 knots. And without gear, we're going to belly flop onto the concrete. If we hit the runway at that speed without wheels, the friction will ignite the fuel tanks, Serena said instantly. We'll be a fireball. We have no choice, Harrison said. We can't ditch in the Atlantic at night. The swells will tear us apart. Serena looked at the console. She looked at the terrified first officer. Then she looked at the fuel gauges. Dump the fuel, Serena commanded. We need fuel to reach Gander. No, Serena said, her voice filled with a crazy kind of confidence. We aren't going to Gander. We're landing on the ice. The ice? Harrison looked at her like she was mad. I saw the map, Serena pointed. We are passing over the Grand Banks. There's a massive ice shelf drifting south. It's flat, it's miles long, and it's covered in snow. You want to land a 777 on an iceberg? The snow will act as a retardant, Serena argued fast. It will cool the fuselage as we slide. No sparks, no fire. The ice is thick enough to hold us. It's suicide, Lewis whispered. It's physics, Serena corrected. And it's our only shot. Captain, do you trust me? Harrison looked at the fuel gauge, then at the hydraulic warning. He looked at Serena's determined face. He remembered she had just climbed out of the avionics bay, covered in grease to save them once. Lewis, Harrison said, adjusting his headset, plot a course for the ice shelf. While Flight 802 was preparing for the most dangerous landing in aviation history, Carter O'Connell was sitting in an interrogation room at the JFK Port Authority precinct. He looked disheveled. His tie was loose, his cuffs were stained. But he was smiling, he was checking his watch. Detective Miller walked in, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He looked tired. Comfortable, Mr. O'Connell? Miller asked, sitting down. I'm fine, Detective, Carter said smoothly. I'm just waiting for my lawyer to arrive so I can sue this department for unlawful arrest. and waiting for the news. The news? Miller frowned. You know, Carter leaned back, putting his feet on the table. News travels fast. Accidents happen. Tragedies at sea. Miller stared at him. What are you talking about? Just hypothetical scenarios, Carter smirked. Hypothetically, if that plane were to, say, have a catastrophic failure, then there would be no witness to my alleged assault. No Serena Sterling to press charges. Case dismissed. Miller's eyes narrowed. He placed the coffee down slowly. You think the plane crashed? I think gravity is a harsh mistress, Carter chuckled darkly. And I think Serena Sterling shouldn't have stolen my seat. Just then, the door opened. A frantic officer stuck his head in. Detective, you need to see this. It's CNN. Breaking news. Carter's smile widened. Ah, right on time. Miller stood up and walked to the door. Carter craned his neck to see the TV screen in the bullpen. Breaking news, the banner read. Carter waited for the headline. Passenger jet disappears over Atlantic. But that wasn't the headline. The headline read, Miracle on the ice. Hijacked flight lands safely. Carter's smile froze. On the screen, grainy footage from a Canadian Coast Guard helicopter showed the Horizon Air 777 resting on a massive sheet of white ice. The inflatable slides were deployed. Passengers were walking out onto the snow, alive. The plane was intact. No, Carter whispered. No, no, no. Miller watched the screen, then turned back to Carter slowly. The look on the detective's face was terrifying. Did you say accidents happen? Miller asked, his voice low. I, Carter stammered. Detective, the officer in the hall shouted again. We just got a data packet from the Canadian authorities. It was sent from the plane's black box directly to the FBI. It's an audio file. Miller walked out and grabbed the tablet. He pressed play. The volume was loud enough for Carter to hear from inside the room. It was a recording of a phone call. Silas, it's Carter. She humiliated me. I want her gone. I don't care what it costs. Bring down the plane. Use the exploit. The color drained from Carter O'Connell's face until he looked like a corpse. Miller walked back into the room. He didn't sit down. He unclipped his handcuffs from his belt. Carter O'Connell, Miller said, his voice ringing with satisfaction. You are under arrest for domestic terrorism, conspiracy to commit mass murder, and high treason. That recording is inadmissible, Carter shrieked, standing up. It was obtained illegally. Actually, a voice came from the doorway. A man in a sharp suit walked in. It was an FBI agent. The recording was captured by the aircraft's cockpit voice recorder system, which automatically syncs with ground control during emergency events, the FBI agent said. And since you used your own phone to authorize the hack, we have the digital receipt. Carter slumped back into his chair. He looked at the TV screen one last time. He saw a figure in a grey hoodie standing on the wing of the plane, helping passengers down the slide. Serena. She was alive, and she had won. The biting wind of the Grand Banks whipped across the ice shelf, but for the 280 passengers of Flight 802, the freezing air felt like a miracle. They were alive. Serena Sterling sat on the edge of an orange emergency raft, wrapped in a thermal blanket. Her hands were bruised, and her signature grey hoodie was stained with hydraulic fluid. Captain Harrison approached her, his uniform coat draped over a shivering elderly woman. He stopped in front of Serena and offered a slow, trembling salute. Ms. Sterling, Harrison said, his voice thick with emotion, I've flown for 30 years. I've never seen flying like that. You didn't just buy this airline today, you earned it. Serena smiled wearily, watching the rescue helicopters descend. Just promise me one thing, Captain. Next time I book seat 1A, make sure no one throws my bag in the aisle. 6 months later, the atmosphere inside the Manhattan Federal Courthouse was suffocating. The Flight 802 conspiracy had exposed a rot in the financial world that went deeper than anyone expected. Carter O'Connell sat at the defense table. The bespoke Italian suits were gone, replaced by a standard-issue orange jumpsuit that hung loosely on his gaunt frame. He refused to look at the jury. He couldn't stop staring at the woman in the front row, Serena, wearing a sharp black power suit, flanked by Brad, her new chief technology officer. Mr. O'Connell, Judge Ramirez's voice cut through the silence. You treated a commercial airliner as a pawn in your ego trip. You believed your status placed you above the law. You were wrong. Carter flinched as the gavel came down. On the charges of domestic terrorism and attempted murder, I sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole at ADX Florence. Furthermore, all assets from Oakhaven Capital are seized to pay damages to your victims. Carter slumped, letting out a broken sob. As the bailiffs hauled him up, he looked desperately at Serena. Serena, please, I didn't know it was you. If I had known. Serena walked to the railing. Her expression was ice cold. That's the problem, Carter. You shouldn't have needed to know who I was to treat me like a human being. You saw a hoodie and assumed I was trash. Now the world sees you for what you really are. Epilogue. 1 year later, the rain lashed against the glass at JFK. Serena walked down the jet bridge of Sterling Horizon Airlines. She was wearing jeans and her old canvas backpack. At the entrance to first class, a businessman in a suit hesitated, blocking her path. He looked at her clothes, then opened his mouth to tell her she was in the wrong line. But then he saw the logo on the napkin in his hand, a silhouette of a woman in a hoodie. His eyes went wide. He stepped back in panic. Ms. Sterling, please, go ahead. Take my seat. Serena chuckled, patting his shoulder. Relax, I'm in 1B today. She sat down, buckled her belt, and closed her eyes as the engines roared to life, engines she knew would never fail her again. And that is the story of how one act of arrogance brought down an empire. Carter O'Connell thought his suit and his watch made him superior, but he learned the hard way that true power isn't about what you wear. It's about who you are. He underestimated Serena because of how she looked, and it cost him his freedom. It's a reminder to all of us, treat everyone with respect, whether they're the CEO or the janitor, because you never know who you're really talking to. Karma is always watching, and as Carter found out, it doesn't miss a flight. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if you were in Serena's shoes? I read every comment. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.